A paralyzed Korean Mafia boss left by his wife, but the black maid chose to stay. The rain did not fall gently that night. It
Stay
struck
with
the
me.
glass like it was
Look at me.
angry,
You have
relentless,
to keep
as
fighting.
if soul
Don't
itself
give
had
up now,
finally
not after
decided to
everything.
speak back to the man who once ruled its shadows. Kang Jun heard the rain before he understood anything else. At first, it was only sound, sharp, repetitive, echoing somewhere above him. Then came the smell. Sterile, bitter, chemicals layered over something faintly metallic. His throat burned, dry as if he had swallowed dust. He tried to move. Nothing happened. The absence was immediate and terrifying. Not pain, not numbness, just nothing, as though his body had stopped answering to him entirely. His eyes snapped open. White ceiling, too bright, blurred shapes hovering at the edges of his vision. A machine beeped steadily beside him, each sound measured and calm in a way that felt cruel. No, he tried to say. The word never left his mouth. His heartbeat accelerated. Panic crawled up his spine, cold and sharp. He attempted to lift his hand, to curl his fingers, to do anything, to prove he was still in control. Still nothing. A shadow moved near his bed. "Mr. Calm," a woman said gently. "If you can hear me, blink." Blinking, at least, still belonged to him. He blinked once. Hard. Her face came into focus, a doctor masked, eyes cautious. She leaned closer, speaking slowly now, carefully, as if addressing a fragile object. "You've been in an accident," she said. "There was significant trauma to your spine. You're safe. But we need to talk about what comes next." What comes next? The words echoed like a sentence being passed. Kang Jun stared at the ceiling, while rain dragged its fingers down the window. Somewhere deep inside him, something ancient and ruthless screamed. 3 days later, the rain had stopped. The silence was worse. Kang Jun lay in a private hospital room overlooking the city he once owned. Neon signs blinked indifferently outside the glass. Traffic flowed. People lived. He did not. The door opened softly. He recognized the sound of her heels before he saw her. His wife entered without hesitation, perfectly composed. Her coat was cream, tailored to her slim frame. Her hair fell neatly over one shoulder, not a strand out of place. She stood at the foot of his bed, did not touch him, did not cry. "I spoke to the doctors," she said. "They were very clear." He watched her face, searching for something. Fear, grief, regret. He found none. "They don't know how much movement you'll recover," she continued. "It could be months. It could be never." He wanted to laugh at the irony. Never applied to him before. She folded her hands. "I can't live like this." There it was. Clean. Precise. Final. "This situation," she said, glancing at the machines, the immobile body beneath the sheets. "It's not what I married into." "You married into power," he thought. Into protection. Into the man who made people disappear. Aloud, he said nothing. "I've arranged long-term care," she added. "Private nurses. Everything covered." Her eyes flicked to his face, searching, perhaps, for anger, for pleading. She found only stillness. That seemed to irritate her. "I hope you understand," she said. She leaned down then, close enough that he could smell her perfume. Once, that scent had meant home. Now it meant distance. "Take care of yourself," she whispered. The kiss she placed on his cheek was light, almost formal. Then she turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. Kang Jun stared at the ceiling while something inside him collapsed. For the first time in his life, no one was afraid of him. The estate did not welcome him home. The house had always breathed with movement. Guards at the gates, men in dark suits murmuring in corners, footsteps echoing through marble halls. Now it was quiet. Too quiet. The wheelchair felt like a throne made of shame. Staff lined up politely as he was wheeled inside, their faces carefully neutral. Some bowed. Some avoided eye contact. Some already looked past him, calculating their futures. He noticed who wasn't there. Half the guards. 3 senior men. And his wife. He was rolled into the master bedroom, the room that had once witnessed power, dominance, whispered orders spoken in the dark. Now it smelled faintly of medicine. The door closed. For hours, no one came. Then, late in the evening, Soft footsteps approached. A knock. Before he could respond, the door opened. She stood there holding a tray. She was tall, dark-skinned, her hair pulled back neatly. Her uniform was simple, clean. She looked young, but her eyes were older than her face, observant and careful. "I'm Aisha," she said quietly. "I'll be working here." She placed the tray gently on the table, her movements unhurried. Tea, soup, fresh cloth. She did not stare. She did not rush. When she turned to leave, something inside Kang Jun panicked. "Wait," he tried to say. Nothing came out. She paused anyway. Turned back. "Yes." His throat tightened. He stared at her, frustration flashing in his eyes. She studied his face for a moment, then said, "If you need something, you can blink twice." He hesitated, then blinked. Once, twice. She walked back to him. "What do you need?" He forced air through his lungs, shaping the word carefully, painfully. "Stay." The word came out broken. She didn't answer immediately. He expected her to leave. Instead, she pulled a chair closer and sat. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll stay." Something loosened in his chest. Neither of them knew it yet, but that moment, small, quiet, almost invisible, was the beginning of everything. Aisha Williams had learned how to survive by not expecting kindness. She had arrived in South Korea with a suitcase that barely closed and a promise she repeated to herself every night. Just endure. Just work. Just send money home. The job at Kang Jun's estate had been intimidating, but clear. Do your work. Ask no questions. Stay invisible. She had done exactly that. Until the accident. Now the house felt like a wound trying to close. That night, as she sat beside him, she noticed how rigid his jaw was, how his eyes never stopped moving, calculating even now. "You don't have to talk," she said. "I can sit quietly." He swallowed. "Talk," he whispered. "Please." So she did. She spoke about the weather, about how strange the rain felt here compared to Nigeria, about the taste of food she missed. He listened like a man starving. When she finally stood to leave hours later, he watched her like she was something rare. "Will you come back tomorrow?" he asked. "Yes," she said. And she meant it. Over the next days, people left. One by one. Staff resigned politely. Guards were reassigned. Calls went unanswered. Power, Aisha realized, was loud when it existed, and silent when it disappeared. But she stayed. She learned how to help the nurses, how to read his expressions, how to sense his moods before he spoke. She learned when to speak and when to let silence do the work. Kang Jun learned something too. That dependence was terrifying, that needing someone stripped him bare, and that Aisha, quiet, steady Aisha, never treated him like a fallen king, only like a man. One evening, as she adjusted the blanket over his legs, he asked, "Why didn't you leave?" She paused. "Because I know what it's like," she said slowly, "to be abandoned the moment you're no longer useful." His chest tightened. She met his gaze. "And because someone should stay." The words settled between them, heavy and dangerous. Outside, Soul continued to move. Inside the room, something fragile and powerful was being born, and neither of them understood yet how much it would cost. Morning arrived quietly at the estate, without ceremony. Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, dust drifting lazily in the air as if the house itself had slowed its breathing. Kang Jun woke before the nurses arrived, his eyes opening to the pale gold glow on the ceiling. For a moment, the old instinct returned, the urge to rise, to command, to move. Then reality settled back into place. He lay still, listening. Footsteps approached down the hallway. Not hurried, not heavy. Aisha. She knocked softly before entering, carrying a tray balanced easily in her hands. "Good morning," she said. Her voice had begun to anchor his days. She opened the curtains wider, letting the city spill into the room. Seoul looked distant from here, like a world he had once ruled and now only observed. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Some," he replied. His voice was steadier than it had been days ago. Still rough, but present. "That's good." She placed the tray down. "The doctor will come later. Physical therapist too." He exhaled slowly. Another man to tell me what I can't do. She glanced at him, then smiled faintly. Or what you might do again. Someday. He studied her face, trying to understand where her optimism came from. He had spent a lifetime surrounded by people who mistook fear for hope. She adjusted his pillow without asking. He noticed her hands, steady, careful, respectful. No one touched him like that anymore. By noon, the house stirred with unfamiliar tension. Aisha sensed it first. Whispers traveled through the corridors, like drafts of cold air. Doors opened and closed more often. Phones rang, voices low and urgent. When Min-jae arrived, she recognized him immediately. He did not look like danger. He was clean-cut, smiling, dressed in a suit that fit him too well. His eyes, however, were sharp, too sharp for someone pretending to be concerned. He bowed slightly when he entered Kang Jun's room. "Hyung," Min-jae said warmly. "It's good to see you awake." Kang Jun's gaze hardened. "Speak." Min-jae's smile flickered, then recovered. "I came to discuss continuity." Aisha stood near the wall, silent. "The organization is unsettled," Min-jae continued. "People are uncertain. They're asking questions." "Let them," Kang Jun said. "I'm still here." Min-jae glanced briefly at the wheelchair, then back to Kang Jun's face. "Yes, but power requires presence." Aisha felt something tighten in her stomach. "I'll handle it," Kang Jun said. "With respect," Min-jae replied gently. "Your condition complicates things." Silence pressed down on the room. Then Kang Jun said quietly, "Leave us." Min-jae hesitated, eyes flicking to Aisha. "She stays." Min-jae smiled again, thinner this time. "Of course." When he left, the room felt colder. Aisha approached slowly. "That man is a problem," Kang Jun finished. "And not the only one." She folded her arms, trying to keep her voice steady. "Are we in danger?" He met her gaze. For once, he did not soften the truth. "Yes." That night, Kang Jun could not sleep. The ceiling stared back at him like an accusation. Power had always been physical for him. Presence, dominance, the certainty that when he spoke, men moved. Now he lay immobile while vultures circled. He hated that Aisha was here, and he hated even more that he needed her. "Aisha," he called softly. She appeared in the doorway moments later. "Yes." "Sit," he said. She did. "I should send you away," he said, "before things get worse." She did not answer immediately. Instead, she asked, "Do you want me to go?" He hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. "No," she said gently. "Then don't decide for me." He closed his eyes briefly. "I don't know how to protect you like this." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "I didn't come here to be protected. I came here to work. And somewhere along the way, I chose to care." The word landed softly, but its weight stunned him. Care. No one had ever accused him of inspiring that before. Days turned into a fragile routine. Physical therapy hurt. Every session left him exhausted, drenched in sweat, humiliated by how much strength he had lost. Aisha stayed nearby, pretending not to notice when frustration broke through his control. When he snapped, she didn't flinch. When he went silent, she filled the space gently. Once, after a particularly brutal session, he whispered, "I was strong once." She wiped his forehead with a cool cloth. "You still are. Just differently." He laughed bitterly. "You sound like a therapist." She smiled. "I sound like someone who sees you." That night, she read to him. Not books about business or strategy, but stories. Old folk tales. Poetry she half remembered from school. Her voice wrapped around him, steady and warm. For the first time since the accident, he slept without dreaming of falling. The first threat came quietly. Aisha noticed it while doing inventory in the kitchen. A man she didn't recognize lingered too long near the gate. Another watched from across the street. When she told Kang Jun, his jaw tightened. "They're testing boundaries," he said, "seeing how exposed we are." "What do we do?" He looked at her, really looked at her, as if weighing something dangerous. "We remind them I'm not dead." That evening, he made calls. His voice, still weak, carried authority sharpened by desperation. Old alliances stirred. Favors were called in. Power shifted, not visibly, but enough. Enough to provoke retaliation. It happened 2 nights later. A crash shattered the silence, glass exploding inward. Alarm screamed. Aisha ran before she thought. She locked Kong Jun's door, her hands shaking only slightly. She grabbed the emergency phone and dialed the number he had given her. "Code Black," she said. "They're inside." Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Kong Jun watched her with something like awe. "You should hide," he said. She shook her head. "I won't leave you." The door rattled. Voices shouted. Then gunfire echoed through the house. Minutes stretched into lifetimes. Finally, silence. When security arrived, when police lights flooded the windows, Aisha sank into the chair beside his bed, breath shuddering. He stared at her. "You didn't run," he said. She met his gaze, eyes fierce. "I told you. I choose." Something broke open in his chest then. Something dangerous and irreversible. He reached, barely able to lift his hand. She took it without hesitation. Later, after statements were taken and the house returned to uneasy quiet, Kong Jun spoke. "If you stay," he said slowly, "your life will never be simple again." She squeezed his fingers gently. "It never was." He swallowed. "I don't know where this ends." She smiled, tired but sincere. "Neither do I. But we'll find out." Outside, the city glowed, indifferent, eternal. Inside the room, 2 damaged people sat in the aftermath of violence, bound by something neither had planned. And somewhere beyond the gates, Min-jae watched the lights return to normal and began to plan. The night after the attack, Aisha did not sleep. She sat in the chair beside Kong Jun's bed, the house still humming faintly with the aftermath of violence, security radios crackling in distant rooms, the low murmur of men speaking in urgent tones, glass being swept somewhere down the hall. Every sound made her shoulders tense. Kong Jun noticed. "You should rest," he said quietly. "I'll be watched closely now." She didn't look at him. "I'm not tired." It was a lie. Her body ached from adrenaline and fear, her mind replaying the crash of glass over and over. But if she closed her eyes, she knew she would see men bursting through doors, guns raised, the fragile line between safety and death snapping without warning. She stayed awake because staying awake felt like control. "You stayed when you shouldn't have," Kong Jun said after a moment. She finally turned to him. "I stayed because I wanted to." That kind of loyalty gets people killed. Her jaw tightened. "Then stop acting like your life is the only one that matters." The words surprised them both. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then Kong Jun exhaled slowly. "You're right." It was the first time she'd ever heard him say that. Morning brought consequences. The estate filled with men again, but these were not the ones from before. They moved differently, spoke less, watched everything. Power was returning, but it was sharper now, edged with desperation. Aisha felt it pressing in on her, from all sides. She could no longer walk through the house unnoticed. Eyes followed her, some curious, some resentful, some calculating. "She's close to him," she overheard one man whisper. "Too close." That afternoon, Min-jae returned. This time he didn't smile. He stood across from Kong Jun's bed, hands clasped behind his back, gaze flicking once to Aisha before dismissing her like furniture. "You've made things complicated," Min-jae said. Kong Jun's voice was calm. "You entered my house without permission. You call that simple?" Min-jae leaned forward. "You can't run an empire from a wheelchair." "You underestimate me," Kong Jun replied. Min-jae straightened, his lips curling slightly. "No, I understand you perfectly, which is why I'm offering help." Aisha's stomach sank. "What kind of help?" Kong Jun asked. "Step aside," Min-jae said. "Publicly. Let me handle operations. You remain the figurehead. Respected. Safe. Silence." Then Kong Jun said, "No." Min-jae's gaze sharpened. "Think carefully." "I am," Kong Jun said. "Get out." Min-jae looked at Aisha again, longer this time. "You've surrounded yourself with distractions." Aisha met his stare without flinching. Min Jae smiled thinly. That's unfortunate. When he left, the air felt poisoned. Aisha turned to Kong Jun. He'll come for you again. Yes, Kong Jun said. And for me, she added. He didn't deny it. The first direct warning came 3 days later. Aisha was returning from the market when a black sedan slowed beside her. The window rolled down. Min Jae sat inside. Get in, he said casually. She kept walking. The car matched her pace. You don't belong in this world, he continued. You're temporary. She stopped, turned. You're wrong, she said. I chose this. He laughed softly. You think choice protects you. She felt fear then, real fear, but she held his gaze. If anything happens to me, she said, everything you've done comes out. Min Jae studied her for a long moment. Then the window rolled up. The car drove away. Aisha stood there shaking, the weight of what she had just done crashing over her. She told Kong Jun everything that night. His reaction was immediate and terrifying. I should have sent you away, he said, voice tight with fury. Not at her, but at himself. She stepped closer. Stop deciding my life like everyone else has. This isn't about pride, he snapped. This is about survival. So is staying, she shot back. He stared at her, chest rising and falling rapidly. Then something shifted. He closed his eyes. I'm afraid, he admitted hoarsely. The confession stunned her more than any shout could have. I've faced men with guns, he continued. I've buried enemies. I've lost everything I thought mattered. But losing you. He stopped. She waited. I don't know how to survive that, he finished. Her breath caught. Slowly, she reached out and placed her hand over his heart. Then don't lose me, she whispered. Let me stand with you. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Kong Jun covered her hand with his. From that day on, everything changed. Aisha was no longer just a maid who stayed. She became part of Kong Jun's inner world. He asked for her opinion. He explained decisions. He trusted her instincts when she sensed danger before anyone else did. They spent evenings talking, really talking, about her childhood by the sea, about his first kill, about the lies they told themselves to survive. Sometimes silence stretched between them, thick and charged. Once, as she adjusted his blanket late at night, her fingers brushed his wrist. Neither of them pulled away. The moment hovered, fragile, electric. He watched her carefully. If this becomes something else, he said softly, there's no going back. She swallowed. I know. She leaned closer, her forehead resting briefly against his. Not a kiss, but something far more dangerous. The attack came sooner than expected. It happened during a storm, thunder rattling the windows like a warning. Security was thinned deliberately. The power went out. Darkness swallowed the house. Aisha was with Kong Jun when the first scream echoed down the hall. Get under the bed, he ordered. She shook her head. I'm not leaving you. The door burst open. 2 men rushed in. Before Aisha could scream, Kong Jun shouted a name. From the shadows, a third man appeared, one of the few still fiercely loyal. The struggle was fast, brutal. When it was over, blood stained the floor. Aisha stood frozen, heart pounding, staring at the aftermath of the world she had stepped into. Kong Jun watched her carefully. This is who I am, he said quietly. This is the life you chose. She turned to him, tears in her eyes, but her voice was steady. No, she said. This is the life that came for us, and I'm still here. That night, she broke. In the bathroom, silent sobs shook her body. Fear, rage, exhaustion. When she returned to his room, Kong Jun saw it all in her face. Come here, he said. She hesitated. He waited. She sat beside him, and this time, when he pulled her gently into his arms, she didn't resist. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heart beat strong and uneven beneath her ear. He held her carefully, reverently. I won't let this destroy you, he murmured. She whispered back, I won't let it destroy you either. Outside, sirens wailed. Inside, 2 people clung to each other in the eye of a storm. And Min Jae, watching from afar, realized something dangerous. Aisha was no longer leverage. She was power, and power had to be eliminated. The first betrayal did not come with gunfire. It arrived quietly, dressed as routine. Aisha noticed it in the way the house no longer felt neutral. The walls, once merely silent, now seemed to listen. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Men who had begun to nod respectfully now looked through her, or worse, looked at her as if measuring her worth against the risk she represented. She was no longer invisible. That, she understood, was dangerous. Kang Jun felt it too. Power had returned to him, but it was altered. Less brute force, more chessboard. He spent hours on calls, issuing instructions, dismantling threats before they could fully form. Yet every decision carried a shadow, and that shadow had Min Jae's face. "You shouldn't walk alone anymore," Kang Jun told her one evening. Aisha paused in the doorway. "I won't live like a prisoner." He watched her carefully. "You already live in a war zone." She stepped closer. "Then teach me how to survive it." Something dark and proud flickered in his eyes. The first true fracture came from within. A man named Juan, one of Kang Jun's oldest allies, requested a private meeting. He arrived with bowed head and respectful tone, but his eyes never fully met Kang Jun's. "I've stood with you for 20 years, Juan said. "I've bled for you." "I know," Kang Jun replied. "But times have changed." Juan continued carefully. "The organization needs certainty. Strength that can be seen." Kang Jun's fingers tightened against the armrest. "Speak plainly." Juan hesitated, then glanced, briefly, toward Aisha, who stood near the window. "Some believe your attachment has made you vulnerable." The word attachment struck harder than insult. Aisha stiffened. Kang Jun's voice dropped. "Leave." Juan bowed, retreating without argument. When the door closed, Aisha spoke first. "I can go." Kang Jun turned sharply. "No, you're losing loyalty because of me." "I'm losing cowards," he snapped, then softened, "and revealing enemies." She studied his face, searching for doubt. There was none. The attempt came 2 nights later. Aisha was returning from the storage wing when a hand clamped over her mouth. She fought, harder than she thought possible, but panic scattered her strength. She was dragged into a side room, the door slamming shut behind her. Min Jae stood there, calm as ever. "I warned you," he said. She kicked, struck, screamed, but the men holding her were stronger. Min Jae crouched in front of her. "You should have left." Before he could say more, gunfire erupted outside. Chaos. Shouting. The door burst open. Kang Jun's men stormed in, weapons raised. Min Jae vanished into smoke and noise, leaving Aisha collapsed on the floor, shaking violently. When Kang Jun was wheeled moments later, his face drained of all color at the sight of her. "Aisha," he whispered. She looked up at him, tears streaking her face, rage burning behind them. "I told you," she said hoarsely. "This life would come for us." He swallowed hard. "I failed you." "No," she said. "They did." That night, Kang Jun made a decision. Not strategic, not calculated, personal. He summoned every remaining loyalist to the estate. Those who came were fewer than before, but they were solid. Min Jae had crossed a line, and Kang Jun would end him. The confrontation was inevitable. It happened in an abandoned factory near the river, a place heavy with rust and memory. Kang Jun arrived surrounded by men, his wheelchair rolling forward like a declaration. Min Jae waited inside, smiling. "You came in person," Min Jae said. "Bold." Kang Jun's voice carried through the cavernous space. "You touched what was mine." Min Jae laughed. "You mean the maid?" The word snapped something loose. Kang Jun lifted his chin. "You underestimated her. And you underestimated me." Aisha stood behind Kang Jun, her hands clenched, fear and fury warring inside her. Gunfire erupted. Shouts echoed. In the chaos, Min Jae tried to flee. Aisha saw it before anyone else. She moved, fast, decisive, grabbing the fallen weapon at her feet and firing once. The sound stunned her. Min Jae fell. Silence followed. Everyone stared at her. Kang Jun turned slowly, his eyes locking onto hers, not with shock, but with something deeper. Recognition. You didn't hesitate, he said quietly. Her hand shook as she dropped the gun. I chose. Afterward, when the city swallowed the echoes of violence, they returned home together. The house felt different now. Safer, but irrevocably changed. That night, Aisha sat beside Kang Jun's bed, exhaustion pulling at her bones. I crossed a line, she said softly. He reached for her hand. You defended yourself. And you. He squeezed her fingers. You're stronger than anyone here. She looked at him then, really looked at him. You don't see me as someone you rescued, she said. No, he replied. I see someone who stood. Tears slipped down her cheeks. He brushed them away with his thumb, gentle and reverent. Stay, he whispered. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. I'm not going anywhere. Outside, dawn broke over Seoul, pale and uncertain. The war was not over. But love, dangerous, defiant love, had survived its first true test. Power did not return to Kang Jun all at once. It came back in fragments, measured, deliberate, earned. The city still remembered him. That was the dangerous part. Memory was louder than presence. Men still spoke his name carefully. Enemies still paused before acting. Allies still waited for direction. But now, power required something else. Clarity. Kang Jun learned quickly that paralysis stripped away illusion. There was no room for indecision when the body refused to cooperate. Every thought had to be precise. Every move had to matter. He rebuilt his network quietly. He replaced fear with structure, violence with inevitability. Aisha watched him from the edges at first, uncertain where she fit now that she was no longer just a woman who stayed. Then one night, he asked her to sit beside him during a meeting. The room stilled. Eyes shifted. Some men stiffened. Others frowned. Kang Jun noticed everything. She speaks for me when I'm not present, he said calmly. And sometimes when I am. The silence that followed was heavy with resistance. Aisha felt her heart pound, but she didn't look away. If you have a problem with that, Kang Jun continued, you have a problem with me. No one spoke. Afterward, when the room emptied, Aisha exhaled shakily. You didn't warn me. He looked at her. You didn't need warning. You needed recognition. She swallowed. They'll never see me as one of them. I don't want them to, he replied. I want them to respect you. Physical therapy resumed with renewed intensity. The doctors were cautious, realistic. Progress was uncertain. Improvement slow. But Kang Jun pushed. Every small victory, a twitch of muscle, a moment of balance, felt monumental. Aisha was there for all of it. She learned how to brace him, how to steady him without undermining his pride. She celebrated progress quietly, without pity. Once, after a particularly brutal session, he slumped back into the wheelchair, drenched in sweat, teeth clenched against pain. Is it worth it? He asked, voice raw. She wiped his brow gently. You tell me. He met her gaze. I want to stand beside you. The words settled deep in her chest. The organization tested him again. A shipment delayed. A border dispute flared. A minor faction attempted to claim autonomy. Kang Jun responded without spectacle. Decisions were swift. Consequences unavoidable. By the time rumors spread, the outcomes were already sealed. Aisha began accompanying him on calls, listening, learning the rhythm of power that did not rely on threat alone. You don't lead with fear anymore, she observed one evening. He considered it. Fear fades. Loyalty lasts longer when it's chosen. She smiled faintly. You sound different. I am different, he said. So are you. She thought of the woman she'd been when she arrived. Quiet, cautious, invisible. She was none of those things now. The reckoning came unexpectedly. Not from the organization. From his wife. She appeared at the gate one afternoon, immaculate as ever, eyes sharp with calculation. Aisha watched from the balcony as Kang Jun was wheeled into the courtyard. I heard you were recovering, his wife said coolly. Recovering, he echoed. I thought perhaps we could talk, she said. Privately. He glanced at Aisha. Anything you say, he replied. You can say here. His wife's eyes flicked to Aisha with barely concealed disdain. This is inappropriate. Kang Jun's voice hardened. This is my life now. She inhaled sharply. You're making a mistake. No, he said calmly. I made one before. Silence stretched. You chose to leave, he continued. I chose to survive. She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time, uncertainty crept into her expression. I wish you well, she said finally. He nodded. Goodbye. When she left, Aisha felt something release inside her. He reached for her hand. You stood your ground, she said. So did you, he replied. That night, they sat together in the quiet, the house no longer feeling like a battlefield. I don't regret staying, Aisha said softly. Neither do I, Kang Jun replied. He turned his wheelchair slightly, facing her fully. There's something I need to say, he continued. Not as a man you protect, not as someone you chose out of circumstance. She waited, breath held. As a man who loves you, he said. The words were steady, certain. Her chest tightened, emotion rising fast and fierce. I love you too, she whispered. He reached for her face, cupping her cheek with reverent care. When they kissed, it was not rushed or desperate. It was earned. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, something lasting took root. The first time Kang Jun stood without assistance, the room went silent. It was early morning. Pale sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the rehabilitation wing, turning the polished floor into a sheet of soft gold. The physical therapist hovered nearby, hands ready, but not touching. Aisha stood a few steps away, her fingers laced together so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Kang Jun rose slowly from the chair. Every movement felt deliberate, like crossing a frozen lake without knowing where the ice might break. His legs trembled, not with weakness alone, but with memory. Pain flared, sharp and electric, reminding him how close he still was to falling. He stood anyway, for 3 seconds, then 4, then 5. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. She did not clap, did not speak. She simply watched, eyes shining, as if she were witnessing something sacred. When he finally sat back down, exhaustion flooding him, Kang Jun let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. I did it, he said quietly. Aisha crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt in front of him, her hands resting on his knees. You stood, she whispered. You really stood. He looked at her, emotion swelling in his chest until it hurt more than any physical pain ever had. I didn't fall, he said. She smiled through tears. You won't. Not again. Recovery did not mean freedom. Not immediately. The organization still existed, and with it, obligations Kang Jun could not simply abandon. But something fundamental had shifted. The men around him sensed it, even if they could not name it. He no longer ruled from fear. He ruled from inevitability. Decisions were cleaner now. Less personal. Less cruel. Aisha noticed the change most clearly in the way he slept. No more jolting awake. No more nights spent staring at the ceiling, fighting ghosts. When he slept beside her now, carefully, cautiously, his breathing was deep and steady, his hand always reaching for hers in the dark. One evening, as rain traced slow paths down the windows, Aisha sat on the edge of the bed, brushing her hair back thoughtfully. Do you ever think about leaving? She asked. Kang Jun turned his head slightly. Leaving what? All of this, she said. The power. The danger. He considered it. Every day. She met his gaze. Then why don't you? Because walking away without preparing the ground beneath you is just another way of falling, he replied. I won't do that to us. The word us settled warmly between them. The final reckoning came quietly. No blood. No spectacle. Kang Jun summoned the remaining heads of the organization to a private meeting. The room was austere, stripped of ornamentation, the kind of place where illusions died quickly. I'm stepping back, he said simply. Murmurs rippled through the room. I'll remain, he continued, as an advisor. Oversight, but operational control will shift. Suspicion flickered in several faces, relief in others. You'll still answer to me, Kang Jun added calmly. And the rules are changing. He outlined them clearly. Less violence, less territory, more legitimacy. Some men balked. Some nodded. Those who refused were replaced within weeks. Aisha listened from the adjoining room, her heart pounding, not from fear, but from awe. He wasn't abandoning power. He was transforming it. The day he walked, really walked, into the garden without assistance, the sky was impossibly blue. Aisha stood at the steps, hands covering her mouth as he descended slowly, deliberately. Each step a small rebellion against fate. When he reached the grass, he stopped, closed his eyes, breathed. The scent of earth and leaves filled his lungs. "I never thought I'd feel this again," he said. Aisha approached, slipping her arm through his. "What?" "Normal," he replied softly. They stood there together, not as master and maid, not as protector and protected, but as two people who had chosen each other in the worst of times. "I want to leave Seoul," he said suddenly. She blinked. "Leave?" "For a while," he clarified. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can exist without shadows watching." Her heart raced. "And the organization?" "It will survive," he said. "Or it won't. Either way, it won't own us." She studied his face, searching for doubt. There was none. "Okay," she said. He smiled, a real one, unguarded. "Okay. Yes," she repeated. "Let's go." They left quietly. No announcement. No farewell. Just two suitcases and a plane bound for somewhere green and far away from old ghosts. The house sold within months. The organization adapted. And life, ordinary, precious life, began. They rented a small home near the coast, where mornings smelled like salt and afternoons stretched lazily beneath open skies. Kong Jun learned how to cook poorly and laugh at himself. Aisha took classes, built something of her own, no longer defined by survival alone. Sometimes, at night, the past crept in. He would wake, breath quickening. She would anchor him with a touch. Sometimes she would remember fear, hands grabbing, doors slamming. He would hold her until the memories loosened their grip. They healed each other slowly. Not perfectly, but honestly. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sea in fire and gold, Kong Jun reached into his pocket. Aisha frowned. "What are you doing?" He took a breath. Standing. Then carefully, he did just that. He knelt. Her breath caught. "I don't have much to offer that's clean," he said. "My past is heavy. My future uncertain. But my heart." He looked up at her, eyes steady. "Is yours?" Tears blurred her vision. "Yes," she whispered before he could finish. "Yes." They laughed, cried, held each other as the world continued turning, indifferent and beautiful. Years later, people would tell stories. About a feared man who vanished. About a woman who changed everything. But those stories would never capture the truth. That love didn't save them. Choice did. And every morning, as sunlight filled their home, they chose each other again. Quietly. Bravely. Without regret. Thank you for listening to a paralyzed Korean mafia boss left by his wife, but the black maid chose to stay. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world. Until next time, Red Heart.